Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. Well, the entire Pathfinder community is talking about the Battlecry Playtest, so it's probably best if I throw my hat into the ring. This video was published on Wednesday, May 1st, 2024 as a reference for those watching later. If you don't know, Paizo, makers of Pathfinder 2e, have released a new playtest for 2 new classes for their upcoming Battlecry sourcebook, which is scheduled for release during Gen Con of 2025, but that is, of course, subject to change. First off, the boring stuff out of the way. The playtest is for 2 new classes, the Commander and the Guardian. The playtest will run from now until June 21st, so a bit longer than a month and a half. So, if you want to help Paizo out, make sure to read through the document, see if you can get a playtest together, and give Paizo some feedback. All of the information on how to do that, along with the download for the playtest itself, will be linked below. Oh, one thing. For this playtest, the iconics of these classes are not revealed yet. Normally in these playtests, we get a little blurb about the person who will represent the class and a cool sketch drawing of that person, but we did not get that in this playtest. We do get 2 pictures, one of a dwarf woman with a spear and one of a half-orc. These are actually existing Pathfinder NPCs that will not be the iconics for the class. They are just stand-ins. The half-orc is actually Erebeth from the 1st edition Wrath of the Righteous Adventure Path. James Jacobs explains it all in a post on the Paizo message boards, link in the description. Also, I have not playtested these. This video is kind of a gut check reaction to these classes using my knowledge of other Pathfinder 2e stuff to kinda gauge what's going on. Now, I do plan on getting a few friends together to playtest this if we can, and if there's interest, I'll do a follow-up video talking about that playtest, but just know this is going to be an initial response video. I wrote this the day the playtest came out and didn't have time to do an in-depth playtest of both classes levels 1 to 20, obviously. Also, I won't be able to cover every feat, class feature, and tactic, or we'd just be here all day. This is just a summary to get you hyped. Go read the playtest if you're interested. Alright, let's get into it. The first class we see is Commander. They are supposed to be, well, battlefield commanders. They're not the best soldiers in the world, but they are people who know how to direct the best soldiers and how to make them even better. They get 8 HP per level and start off trained and eventually get to master in all simple weapons, martial weapons, and all armors. This is fairly standard for what the community has dubbed a near martial character. Other near martials are investigators, inventors, and thaumaturges, with the exception that commanders are trained in heavy armor, which most near martials are not. Makes perfect sense for a battlefield commander, though. They are an intelligence-based class, but start off with only a few skills. Society, which makes sense as that is the history and humanoid knowledge skill, and warfare lore. This is the first class that I can recall that is hardwired for a lore skill. Remember that a thaumaturge's esoteric lore is actually a class feature. Additionally, their warfare lore skill automatically gets better as they level up, going to expert at level 3, master at 7, and legendary at 15. They also get the ability to use warfare lore to replace certain other skills. Beyond that, they only get 2 skills plus their intelligence mod, but remember they are an intelligence-based class. They eventually get up to master and will saves, treating successes as critical successes, and at level 15, the same for reflex saves. They also, notably, are a class that gets up to legendary in class DCs. I believe the only other class that gets up to legendary in class DCs is the kineticist, so that's something. They also, interestingly, don't have a traditional subclass, though they have something that kinda sorta fills the role. Those are called tactics, and we'll get to them in a second. Commanders basically have 3 things that make them stand out. Firstly, they have a banner, and several of their actions and feats reference their banner. A commander cannot do banner stuff without their banner. Their banner can be affixed to any shield or weapon, or can be held or attached to a pole. Not sure how you would attach a banner to a sword, but whatever. Anyway, as long as a commander has their banner properly displayed, which usually means they are waving it around on their person, all allies within 30 feet get a +1 status bonus to fear, but if it's destroyed, all allies within 30 feet become frightened 1 instead. Now, a commander can put their banner on their back, which gives everyone the will save bonuses, but does prevent them from using banner activities and feats. The second thing of note is that a commander has these things called squad mates. Essentially, at the start of the day, during daily preparations, commanders can do some drills with anyone who will listen. I presume this doesn't interfere with anyone else's daily preparations, though who knows. Anyway, if someone trains with a commander, they become squad mates. A commander can have a number of squad mates equal to 2 plus their int modifier, so you can't just train the whole city guard to be your squad mates. Squad mates lead to the commander's third big thing, their tactics feature I mentioned earlier. They start off with a list of 4 tactics, and they can pick up more with feats. You can memorize 2 of these 4 tactics each day to start off with, though you can swap them out with a 10-minute rest so long as your squad is willing to do even more drills with you. These tactics are actions that you can take on your turn to give you and your allies bonuses. There are a lot, but some of my favorites are giving everyone a swim speed or even a climb speed. One I see a lot of potential with is pincer attack. This tactic lets everyone step, and if they end up adjacent to an enemy, that enemy is off guard to melee attacks until the start of the commander's next turn. This is basically a level 1 version of the rogue feat gang up. You can make opponents off guard to your party rogue without them having to flank. Plus, off guard is just a -2 to AC, so all melee people can benefit from it. It's even great for non-melee characters, as it's still a one-action activity that lets people step for free, so even your weakling party wizard could move closer to be within spell range, or to step away from the death monster that's trying to unalive it in melee. Now, tactics do require actions every round and can only be done in combat, so you can't just help everyone swim across a river by shouting at them to swim every round if you aren't in combat, though that one is up to GM fiat. One last thing about tactics, a squad mate can only benefit from 1 tactic a round, so if you have 3 commanders in your party, they can't all yell at the fighter to do all of the things. Other than that, there are a few cool class abilities. Once per round, they can give an ally a second reaction that can be used to accomplish one of their tactics. Limiting, but still good, especially for this double team tactic. That way a fighter can attack with double team and still keep their reactive strike. Starting at level 3, commanders can always choose to use their warfare lore for initiative, and they can use it to identify creatures, but only to ask certain questions. That's still pretty cool, though. Moving on to commander feats, they are interesting. They have several class feats that are essentially medic archetype feats. One makes medicine an intelligence-based skill for them and gives them the battle medicine skill feat. There's also a feat that lets them battle medicine with their shield hand, and a 14th level feat called Desperate Resuscitation, which is just the 16th level medic archetype's feat, Resuscitate. There are feats to increase the number of tactics you have, all that good stuff. One kinda sorta standout feat lets them plant their banner in the ground, and then everyone in an area gets temporary hit points that refresh at the start of every round. The temporary HP start off kind of meh at 1 to 2 HP, but eventually at level 20 they can get as high as 27, so yeah, pretty cool. They can get a steed animal companion, though that is a bit meh, especially if compared against a druid's animal companion. All in all, I like the commander. It's solid. It clearly borrows a lot from Pathfinder 1st Edition's Cavalier. The banner thing is basically ripped straight from the Cavalier, and the tactics thing is evocative of, though mechanically different than, the Cavalier's tactician ability to hand out teamwork feats. Though there are a few problems I can see. Some stuff here is vague, which, Pathfinder 2 tries to be as clear as possible, so that's a problem. For example, they can use warfare lore to identify most creatures? Like, which creatures can't they identify with warfare lore? I imagine some Cthulhian nightmare creature that no one has ever seen before couldn't be identified with warfare lore, but then a player might get butthurt about not being able to use their class feature. Also, the defensive retreat tactic is vague. It says a squad mate can move towards enemies only if it helps them, quote, move towards safety. But, what does safety mean? I know players that will argue until they are blue in the face that flanking an enemy is safety because it means that they will have an easier time winning the battle and thus less chance for people to attack them, though it is clearly not the intent of the defensive retreat tactic. The big thing, though, is I kinda wish this was a wisdom-based class. Sure, being smart on the battlefield is good, but knowing when to apply which tactic is wisdom in my book, not intelligence. And we already have 2 intelligence-based martial characters in the Investigator and the Inventor. I don't think we need a third. At the very least, I'd like to see a class archetype for the Commander that switches them over from intelligence to wisdom. I don't think that would really change anything about the class. Maybe let them use wisdom for warfare lore? That might be the only thing. Anyway, mostly solid. A lot of their actions or activities are limited by action economy, so they may seem more powerful than they actually are at first glance. But there are a few issues that might make the class too powerful. Like I said, I have not playtested this, but one of the ways that Pathfinder balances power is to restrict things by action economy. And the Commander kinda breaks that by tinkering with action economy. For example, the form-up tactic gives everyone around you a free stride action, meaning other martial characters in your party can get up in the face of bad guys and do their biggest attacks without needing to spend actions moving into the correct position. The worst offender by far is Ready Aim Fire, which the Commander can get at level 15. This lets everyone draw their ranged weapon, reload it, and make an attack, or lets your spellcasters cast ranged cantrips. This basically doubles the number of attack cantrips your party can cast in a round, and that's insane. The Commander also kinda breaks the game because strikes from them don't have the multiple attack penalty. For example, the Strike Hard tactic lets a squadmate strike as a reaction, which, remember, they can give them an extra reaction. Now imagine your squadmate is a Giant Instinct Barbarian who is doing 1d12 plus 10 damage with their greatsword at level 1. Another hit from those is huge, especially at no accuracy penalty because it's not during the Barbarian's turn. One last thing that was noted by the Roll for Combat livestream about this playtest is that the class is really reliant on other people doing stuff for you. It is basically telling other players how to play their characters. Maybe the rogue is really hurt and doesn't want to head into flank. Maybe the fighter doesn't want to attack the enemy because the enemy surrendered. The players you command have the right to say no, that's in the class, but then your character wastes their action for nothing, and that can lead to some table conflict with players, not characters. It's something to consider if your party doesn't like other people telling them what to do. Just something to keep in mind. Anyway, let's move on to the Guardian. Guardians are based around the concept of bodyguards, or soldiers who get the most out of their armor. They are protectors, who are willing to put their bodies on the line in order to save their friends and allies. They are a strength-based class that gets 10 HP per level and starts off trained in simple and martial weapons and all armors. They also get up to legendary and armor training, but interestingly, only for medium and heavy armors. The most interesting thing about Guardians is that they don't have the same basic chassis as other martial characters. See, other martial characters like Rangers and Barbarians get Expert in Weapons at 5, Weapon Specialization, which increases the damage they deal at 7, and Expert Armor at 13. They also get Master in Weapon Attacks at 13, and Master in their armor at level 19. There are some minor variations to this. Fighters get better at weapons, and champions have a different progression for armor because they get up to Legendary, but that's basically what happens. Guardians are different. They get Armor Expert at 5, then Master at 11, and Legendary at 15, but their weapon capabilities are delayed, getting Expert at 7 instead of 5, and Mastery at 17 instead of 13. That's a delay of 2, then 4 levels, and their weapon specialization class features are similarly delayed. We'll talk about what this means later in the video, but keep it in mind. Other than that, they eventually become Master in Fortitude saves at 9, with successes becoming crit successes, and later on at level 15, the same for will saves. Starting off, Guardians get the armor specialization effect of medium and heavier armors that they wear at level 1, which is crazy. Like, most classes don't even get armor specialization, and the only one who does is the champion at level 7. This video was made before the Remastered Champion has come out. Remastered Champions may be different. They also start off with the ability to sleep in their armor and the shield block feat automatically. Another class feature is the Intercept Strike reaction, where they can intercept a strike meant for an adjacent ally and they take the damage instead, but reduce the damage by 2 plus their level. It's very similar to the Champion reaction, but the Guardian takes the damage instead. Interestingly, Intercept Strike works on physical damage, so it works on things like the Needle Darts cantrip, which does piercing damage, but does not work on a strike from a Will-O-Wisp, say, which does electricity damage. They can get a feat that fixes this later on, though. They also get some stuff at later levels, like the Die Hard feat and the ability to not die when they hit dying 4 once a day, and a few other things. The playtest does have 2 subclasses for the Guardian, but both revolve around their taunt mechanic, so let's talk about that first. At level 1, the Guardian has a taunt ability which takes an action and lasts a round. When they taunt someone, which doesn't have the mental trait so it works on mindless creatures like zombies, they basically open themselves up to attack. The creature makes a will save, and if they critically succeed, nothing happens. If they normal succeed, though, they suffer a -1 to attack anyone who is not the Guardian who taunted them, and their DCs are decreased by 1. Importantly, however, they have a +2 to hit the Guardian, and the DCs against the Guardian are increased by 1. Now, the way taunt is worded is a bit vague, but I think the intent is just that the enemy has to include the Guardian in an offensive action. So if the Guardian taunts and the enemy casts Fireball on the whole party, the Guardian doesn't actually protect anyone, and the DC to save against the Fireball is increased by 2 for the Guardian. If the enemy fails the will save or critically fails the will save, that just increases the penalty the enemy has to hit anyone who is not the Guardian. Anyway, their subclass has to do with their taunt. One of the subclasses is that if someone you taunted attacks someone else, you increase the damage you do to hit them. The other is that if a person you taunted crits you, you have a resistance to that critical hit. That's it. The second one is pretty lackluster, considering you can already get a resistance to critical hits through armor specialization by wearing armor in the chain category. Also, the subclass doesn't really do anything else for you. They aren't even prerequisites for any feats. Now, to make up for the odd and I would say lackluster class chassis, the Guardian's feats are simply ridiculously good. The level 2 feat Hampering Sweeps makes it so enemies simply can't walk away from the Guardian. Yeah, there's no save, no nothing. Enemies simply can't walk away from the Guardian. A level 2 Guardian can pin down an adult Diabolic Dragon with no problem. Until the dragon eats him, granted, but still. The level 4 Shielded Attrition feat lets you raise your shield and walk through an area, triggering reactions like normal. But if the enemy doesn't take those reactions against you, if they could have, they effectively just lose their reaction for the round. Tough Cookie lets you once per day get temporary hit points equal to half your level if you are severely hurt, and at level 18 you have a chance to just negate critical hits entirely. Now, I like the Guardian in principle, kind of a bodyguard character who will throw themselves into harm's way to save a friend. In Pathfinder 1st Edition, I made an indomitable archetype fighter who was kinda like a Guardian, just all hit points and toughness all day. It's kinda like a more hardcore champion. I also like the idea of a character who uses their armor to maximum effect. Just like a fighter is a master of their arms, a Guardian is the master of their armor. I just don't think it's executed here well at all. I find the Guardian uneven. The class chassis, the base abilities of the class, are pretty lackluster and borderline bad. The taunt mechanic, which the whole class is based around, can really screw you over, especially the fact that it increases the DCs by 2. Remember, that's all DCs. Many enemies have just bonkers high DCs, so raising them higher can just land you in hot water. Let me show you what I mean. Let's take a Succubus, a level 7 creature, meaning you can start fighting one as early as levels 4 or 5. They have the ability to dominate you with a DC 26 will save. Now, assuming you are a Guardian with a pretty decent wisdom score at, say, +2, your will save at level 5 should be around +11. That means you need to roll a 15 on the die to succeed against that dominate. And you crit fail on a die roll of 5 or lower. Now, if you taunted, suddenly the requirement becomes 17 on the die and you crit fail on a 7 or lower. And if you crit fail, that's it, you're done. You don't get to control your character, and as long as the succubus doesn't have you attack your friends, suddenly all that defense is going to protect the succubus, and you don't get to play the game anymore. Plus, the taunt mechanic only lasts a round, and it takes an action, which is going to slow the game down with all those extra will saves, and slow down the Guardian because they're going to have to spend an action taunting every round. They do eventually get the chance to get a feat to taunt and raise their shield, which is nice, but it's competing with some other really solid class feats. Another problem with the class chassis is the delayed progression of Guardian attacks. Listen, I get it. The idea is to be more defensive than offensive, but if your Guardian can't hit anything and doesn't do much damage when they do, monsters will just start ignoring them despite the taunt. If your Guardian can't hit the monster, then they can't deal damage, and even if they do hit, they are likely to be one-handing a weapon to use a shield, and with delayed weapon specialization, I can't imagine them doing enough damage to really dissuade the big bad dragon from going after the spellcaster that is sending death rays its way. On the flip side, some of the feats are just ridiculous. I still can't get over hampering sweeps, which just locks down enemies no save no nothing. All you have to do is send out a Guardian 10 or 15 feet ahead of the party, and then the enemies can't get to the spellcasters, but the party cleric can still keep the Guardian up on their feet with heal spells. Listen, I get it. They're trying to make up for the lackluster chassis with cool feats, but I don't think that works. I think instead they have just made an uneven character. I'm not a game designer, I don't know how to balance a new character class, but I know this is basically going to lead to very boring fights. Basically, the way the class is designed, you are encouraged to cheese the heck out of the class. Basically, your best bet is to be a big roadblock that doesn't do damage, can't die, and enemies can't get away from. Then you just sit there as your friends take out enemies while you do nothing. It's not fun for you, it's not fun for the GM, and if your players win every fight without a challenge, it's not fun for them either. I think the champion got it right. They can guard, but not perfectly, but they can still do damage to make up for it. Listen, I want to like the Guardian. I want it to succeed, but I don't think this is the way to do it. Anyway, I'm sorry for the longer video. There was a lot to cover. Remember to check out my third-party book, the NPC Omnibus, which has 36 NPCs from creature levels -1 to 10, all updated for the Pathfinder Remaster. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe if you want to let both me and YouTube know that you like this kind of content and want to see more. Until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming.